The restaurant went silent. A millionaire who once treated everyone like dirt suddenly fell to his knees in front of a black waitress. His voice cracked as he pointed at the bracelet on her wrist. "That bracelet, it belonged to my daughter." Amara stood frozen, her hands trembling as she clutched the bracelet tighter, the silver band suddenly feeling heavier than it ever had before. The millionaire's desperate eyes searched hers, and in that moment, pieces of her childhood began to rise from the shadows of memory. She remembered nights when her mother would sit by the window, staring at the stars with tears glistening in her eyes, whispering to herself about mistakes, about love, about a man who never came back. Amara had been too young to understand, but she had always sensed that her mother carried a secret locked deep inside her heart. Now, as Mr. Kingston wept at her feet, she realized that secret was unfolding right before her eyes. The story her mother once told, about a man who abandoned her but who left behind a single gift, suddenly returned with painful clarity. That gift was the bracelet, the only thing her mother ever said belonged to someone important from the past. Amara's voice shook as she spoke, her words carrying both fear and strength. "This bracelet," she said slowly, "was the only thing my mother left me. If it belonged to your daughter, then, maybe I am the daughter you never knew you had." The entire restaurant gasped, forks and glasses frozen midair, silence pressing down like a storm about to break. Mr. Kingston's face crumpled with unbearable regret, and his sobs filled the golden hall as truth shattered his world. Amara felt a tear roll down her cheek, not just from the weight of his confession but from the ache of realizing the father she had long wished for had been there all along, but too blind, too lost in wealth, to ever notice until now. The golden lights of the restaurant glimmered against the polished marble floor as Mr. Kingston entered, his presence commanding attention the way thunder does before a storm. He had always been the man who never bowed, never faltered, never looked twice at those who served him. But tonight, something broke inside him the instant his eyes landed on Amara's wrist. The sight of the delicate silver bracelet shattered the armor of arrogance he had worn for decades. His face drained of color, his lips trembled, and before anyone could comprehend what was happening, the man worth millions fell to his knees before a simple waitress. Gasps filled the air as glasses clinked to the floor, and the staff froze in disbelief. Where did you get that bracelet?" he whispered, his voice raw and strangled, the sound of a man drowning in memories. "That belonged to my daughter, my little girl. She died years ago." His trembling hand reached out as though touching the bracelet could bring back everything he had lost. Amara instinctively pulled her arm back, clutching the bracelet close to her chest, confusion and unease swirling inside her. "This was my mother's," she said firmly, though her voice shook with uncertainty, her heart racing at the intensity in his eyes. Mr. Kingston's tears spilled freely, streaking down the face of a man who had once believed himself untouchable, unstoppable, invincible. The restaurant that had once bowed to his power now watched him broken, stripped of pride, begging for an answer from a young woman he had never noticed before. For the first time in his life, the millionaire who had conquered boardrooms and crushed rivals found himself powerless, undone not by money, not by enemies, but by the fragile memory of love and the shocking presence of a waitress who wore his daughter's bracelet. Amara stood frozen, her breath shallow, the weight of the millionaire's words crashing against the walls of her heart like a tidal wave she could not hold back. The bracelet on her wrist, the one she had cherished since childhood, suddenly seemed to burn with a truth too heavy to carry. Memories of her mother flooded back, nights when she sat silently at the kitchen table, staring at that same bracelet with tears glistening in her eyes, nights when she whispered to herself about choices, about love, about a man who had once promised forever but had vanished before Amara was even born. She remembered asking who her father was, and how her mother's eyes had always clouded with sorrow before she quickly changed the subject, saying only that Amara was strong enough to live without him. Now, staring at Mr. Kingston's broken figure on the floor, Amara felt her chest tighten with both fear and realization. Could this man, this powerful millionaire weeping like a child, be the missing piece her mother had kept hidden all her life? Her hand trembled as she clutched the bracelet tighter, her voice breaking the silence that pressed down on the restaurant like a storm. "This was my mother's," she whispered, her eyes locked on his, "and if it belonged to your daughter, then maybe I am the daughter you never knew you had." Gasps rippled through the room, the weight of her words freezing every soul in place. Mr. Kingston's face collapsed under the truth, his sobs echoing with decades of regret. Amara felt her own tears rise, torn between anger at the father who had abandoned her mother and sorrow for the man who had lost both time and love. In that instant, the truth no longer belonged to the past, it was standing between them, demanding to be faced. The restaurant was so silent that even the flicker of candle flames seemed loud, every eye fixed on the broken millionaire kneeling before the waitress who might be his daughter. Mr. Kingston's chest heaved as years of pride collapsed under the weight of truth, his voice quivering as he tried to explain the unforgivable. He spoke of a younger self, ambitious, reckless, and blinded by wealth, who had fallen in love but chosen fortune over family, leaving behind the woman who carried his child. His words trembled with regret, each one cutting through the golden hall like a blade, but for Amara they only deepened the ache that had lived quietly in her heart all her life. She remembered her mother's tired smile after endless shifts, her whispered prayers when she thought Amara was asleep, the loneliness she tried to hide behind strength. Now, seeing the man who could have spared them all that pain broken and begging, Amara felt both fury and sorrow burning inside her chest. "You left her to suffer alone," she whispered, her voice trembling but steady, "and you left me to grow up without a father. Money cannot erase that." Mr. Kingston bowed his head lower, tears streaming freely as he admitted that no amount of fortune could buy back the years he had lost, nor the love he had thrown away. For the first time, he confessed he was afraid, not of losing his empire, but of losing the only family he had left. Amara's throat tightened, her eyes wet, her heart torn between anger and compassion. Her mother had always told her never to let hatred rule her life, and though forgiveness felt impossible, she could not let bitterness consume her either. In that moment, she chose strength, not to forget, but to begin healing. The weight of silence lingered in the restaurant, every pair of eyes locked on the fragile moment between father and daughter, between past mistakes and the possibility of redemption. Amara's heart pounded as she looked at Mr. Kingston, the man who had once seemed larger than life, now kneeling before her like a broken child begging not for power, but for love. She took a shaky breath, her voice quiet but steady as she said, "I don't know if I can forgive you today. The pain you caused my mother, the years you missed from my life, they don't disappear with tears. But I also refuse to live chained to anger, because my mother taught me that love is stronger than hate." Her words trembled with honesty, but they carried the strength of her mother's spirit, echoing through the grand hall. Mr. Kingston wept harder, overwhelmed by the grace in the daughter he had never known, and he swore aloud that he would spend the rest of his days not buying her forgiveness with wealth, but earning her trust through love, presence, and humility. Slowly, Amara extended her hand, lifting him from the cold marble floor, a gesture not of full forgiveness but of hope, of choosing a path forward instead of letting the past bury them both. The bracelet that once symbolized abandonment now bound them together, a reminder of what was lost but also what could still be built. The restaurant, once a place of whispers and judgment, now witnessed a transformation more powerful than riches, a millionaire stripped of pride and a young woman strong enough to offer healing where others might have chosen hate. As father and daughter stood together for the first time, the night ended not in sorrow, but in the quiet promise of a new beginning.